The number of people killed or wounded by cluster bombs has broken records since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, say the latest reports. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the Ukraine grain deal will not be restored until the West meets its obligations. The number of people killed or wounded by cluster bombs has hit a new peak, mainly due to their use in Ukraine. A report from the group The Cluster Munition Monitor says there were over 1,000 casualties across 8 countries in 2022, the highest figure recorded by the organization since 2010. By far the greatest number occurred in Ukraine, with 890 casualties registered. The next worst affected were Syria with 84 and Myanmar with 13. Cluster bombs are munitions that explode in mid-air, showering smaller explosives over a wide area. They can have devastating impact on civilians. They represented 95% of all cluster casualties in 2022. The report says Russia has used cluster munitions repeatedly in Ukraine since February 2022. Ukraine has also begun using them since its counteroffensive. Talks between Russian and Turkish presidents to revive the Ukraine grain deal have ended without a breakthrough. The agreement, which Moscow scuppered in July, allowed Ukraine and Russia to export cereals without risk of their ships being attacked. But Vladimir Putin has long complained that the West was not honoring the terms. He said the accord can be revived if the West meets its obligations.
Как уже не раз говорил, нас просто вынудили принять это решение, я имею в виду Россию вынудили, так как западные страны блокировали и продолжают блокировать выполнение зерновой сделки в части обеспечения доступа российских сельхозпроизводителей на мировые рынки. То есть отказываются выводить из-под санкций экспорт нашего зерна и удобрений, возобновлять поставки в Россию агротехники и запчастей, снимать проблемы с логистикой и фрахтом судов, банковским обслуживанием и страхованием продовольственных поставок.
Putin said Russia is close to finalizing the supply of free grain to 6 African nations. But Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who helped broker the black deal, says it remained the only solution.
Gündeme getirilen alternatif öneriler, Karadeniz girişimi gibi sürdürülebilir, güvenli ve taraflar arası işbirliğine dayanan kalıcı bir model sunamamıştır.
Russia and Ukraine are among the world's biggest grain exporters, and the deal is essential for food security in many developing countries. Erdogan says Turkey and the UN have compiled a new package of proposals and that efforts will continue to persuade Moscow to accept them.
Five Afghan women have been evacuated to Paris by the French authorities. The 5 had managed to seek temporary refuge in Pakistan, fleeing their home country after threats from the Taliban. The group includes a former university director, a former consultant for a non-governmental organisation, a TV presenter and a teacher at a secret school in Kabul. One of the women was accompanied by 3 children.
I was working with the government. I was an advisor for Deputy Minister for Policy, and I was threatened by the Taliban, the threat on my life. So I forced and I escaped Afghanistan and I went to Pakistan.
Do not forget Afghanistan women, Afghanistan people, because they need to support of you or support of the United Nations.
French agencies say they're paying special attention to Afghan women targeted by the Taliban, as many held key jobs or worked with Westerners. The UK government has ordered more than 150 schools to keep some or all of their buildings closed when the new term begins later this week because of crumbling concrete. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's been forced to defend himself and his government for not acting sooner over the safety risk of reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete or RAC.
New information came to light relatively recently, and it's important that once it had that the government acted on it as swiftly as possible. Of course, I know the timing is frustrating, but I want to give people a sense of the scale of what we're grappling with here. There are around 22,000 schools in England, and the important thing to know is we expect that 95% of those schools won't be impacted by this.
But Sunak has also been accused of failing to fully fund a programme to rebuild England's schools when he was Britain's finance minister in 2021.
I think that is completely and utterly wrong. Actually, one of the first things I did as Chancellor in my first spending review in 2020 was to announce a new 10-year school rebuilding programme for 500 schools. Now, that equates to about 50 schools a year that will be refurbished or rebuilt. And if you look at what we've been doing over the previous decade, that's completely in line with what we've always done, about 50 or so schools a year refurbished or rebuilt.
But the news has sent school administrators scrambling to find ways to accommodate pupils, with some expected to return to the online instruction used during the COVID-19 pandemic. In Warsaw, pupils are catching the bus at the start of a second school year away from their homes in Ukraine. There are more than 170,000 Ukrainian children at schools in Poland. Some have enrolled in local Polish schools, while others attend Ukrainian schools established in Poland.
Ще складнішим для нас був цей перехід від безкоштовної форми навчання до платної, тому що нам довелося це зробити через те, що об'єм допомоги від міжнародних донорів зменшився. Допомога українським біженцям за кордоном трошечки зменшується, я б сказала, але це не погано, тому що збільшується кількість допомоги всередині України.
Приватні, всі державні.
Students appreciate education in Ukrainian and the homely atmosphere the school has managed to create.
Ми були і тут, і виїжджали в Україну, але намагалися підтримувати контакт з нашими однокласниками. Зараз перший день трошки складно, все-таки 11 клас, але відносно щасливі, що нарешті знаходимося в дуже теплій компанії, де один одного всі підтримують.
Це наша місія – працювати з українськими дітками, з молодим поколінням, яке виросте і повернеться в Україну, щоб відбудовувати цю країну.
However, Polish schools seem to be more challenging for Ukrainian refugees, and while many have found their way in, there are children who still need a lot of support and attention.
The stress of displacement, of trauma, the uncertainty of that affects parents and also children. And so children reported to us the feeling that they had lost the whole world. This was a phrase that came up in our study, and this made it harder for them to focus, to adjust, and to succeed in Polish schools. There are specific challenges and barriers still that Ukrainian children face. So, for example, the language barrier is one that was mentioned to us that prevents children from being accepted and being included.
As noted by the UN, only less than half of Ukrainian children have been enrolled in schools in Poland. Therefore, the UN appealed to their parents to enroll their children in the offline education system, as schools are not only about learning, but also about socialization and mental well-being. Magdalena Hodownik for Euronews from Warsaw.
Players from the Spanish men's national football team have condemned the behaviour of Federation President Luis Rubiales as unacceptable. At their training session ahead of upcoming Euro 2024 qualifiers against Georgia and Cyprus, the team's captain read out a statement.
Queremos rechazar lo que consideramos unos comportamientos inaceptables por parte del señor Rubiales, que no ha estado a la altura de la institución que representa. Nos situamos de manera firme y clara del lado de los valores que representa el deporte. El fútbol español debe ser motor de respeto, inspiración, igualdad y diversidad. Debe dar un ejemplo en sus conductas, tanto dentro como fuera del campo.
Federation President Rubiales has been condemned widely across the game for kissing Spanish forward Jenny Hermoso without her consent. FIFA has suspended him for 90 days, but Rubiales has repeatedly refused to resign over the kiss. There have been rallies in support of the player Jenny Hermoso. The latest was in Barcelona, with protesters flying purple flags representing the feminist movement in Spain. A return home with a taste of defeat. Thousands of people have left the Burning Man festival with their vehicles, a massive event that this year's been bogged down by heavy rains in the Nevada desert, trapping more than 70,000 participants in rivers of mud for 3 days.
With the rain and everything, I'm really glad I didn't bring my vehicle now, because with the mud it would have been, yeah. But the roads dried up quite well, so I'm really impressed with how fast everything is moving.
But not everyone's fled Black Rock City. Burning Man's a counterculture festival, and there are many different views on the same events.
There was a brief double rainbow. It provided us with a lot of energy. The people in our camp were very generous. Those with RVs invited us in when it was, very wet out. And I don't know, my feet are dry and I'm warm, so I'm happy.
Well, I got a cold. But other than that, I've been having a really good past couple days. If I didn't have the cold and I didn't have a friend who I was hoping to give a better Burning Man experience to, I think this would have been my best couple nights at Burning Man.
The one-week event, which began on a San Francisco beach in 1986, attracts some 80,000 artists, musicians and activists, a real logistical challenge for organisers. Steve Harwell, the former lead singer of the rock band Smash Mouth, has died at his home in Idaho at the age of 56. Harwell's iconic raspy voice was one of the most recognisable from his generation. The band had a string of hits in the 1990s and 2000s with All Star, Walking on the Sun and I'm a Believer.